Have you ever looked at your life and asked yourself, what am I really doing with my time? And why do I keep waiting for the right moment that never comes? Because deep inside, you know that something is missing. Something is calling you, but you keep ignoring it while the days pass and the clock keeps moving forward without asking for your permission. Welcome to English to Inspire, a place where you learn English while you also learn how to face your own life with more courage. And if you feel that this message speaks to you, take 1 second to subscribe, because this journey is not just about language. It is about transformation. Today, I want to tell you a story about a man who did not wait for the perfect moment. A man who came from chaos, from uncertainty, from a life where excuses were easy and success looked far away. And that man is LeBron James. But this is not just his story. This is a mirror, and what you see in it depends on how honest you are with yourself. LeBron was not born in a big house. He was not surrounded by comfort, and he did not grow up with a clear path in front of him, because his early life was full of movement, full of instability, and full of moments where giving up would have been the easiest choice. And maybe you know this feeling. Maybe you also feel lost sometimes. Maybe you also think that your situation is too difficult, too unfair, too complicated, and that is exactly why this story matters. His mother was very young when he was born, and life was not easy for them. So they moved from place to place, trying to find something better, trying to survive. And in this kind of life, it is easy to lose direction. It is easy to stop believing. And it is easy to say, this is just how things are. But not everyone accepts that. Not everyone stays in that place. And LeBron was one of those people who decided, even without saying it out loud, that his story would not end there. Now, let me ask you something. And be honest. Are you using your situation as fuel? Or are you using it as an excuse? Because there is a big difference. And this difference decides everything. It decides who you become. It decides how far you go. And it decides if your dreams stay dreams or become reality. And the truth is simple, but not easy. Because responsibility is heavy. And excuses are comfortable. And most people choose comfort. Most people say, I will start tomorrow. I will try next week. I will change when I feel ready. But tomorrow becomes next week. And next week becomes next year. And suddenly years are gone. LeBron did not have the luxury to wait. And maybe you don't have it either, even if you think you do. Because time is not waiting for you. Time is moving now. Not tomorrow, not later, now. And every day you delay, you are making a decision, even if you don't realize it. This is where the story really begins. Not with success, not with fame, but with a choice. A quiet decision inside a young boy who could have followed the easy path but didn't. And as you listen to what comes next, you need to keep asking yourself, what choice am I making right now? Because whether you like it or not, your story is already being written. And the next chapter is closer than you think. Life does not ask if you are ready. It simply moves forward. And sometimes it pushes you into situations where you have no control, no stability, and no clear direction. And that is exactly how the early years of LeBron James felt. Because growing up in Akron was not just about being poor. It was about living in constant uncertainty, moving from one house to another, changing environments, changing routines, and never really knowing what tomorrow would look like. And when a child grows up like this, it can create confusion, fear, and even anger, because there is no strong ground to stand on. His mother, Gloria, loved him deeply, but she was very young and faced many struggles, trying to provide a better life while dealing with her own challenges. And because of that, LeBron often had to adapt quickly, learning to survive emotionally before he even understood what that meant. And maybe you know this feeling, when life forces you to grow faster than you should, when responsibility comes too early, and when you start asking questions that most people your age are not even thinking about. There were moments when LeBron had to stay with different families, moments when school became inconsistent, and moments when the idea of a stable future felt distant. And in this kind of environment, it is very easy to lose focus, to fall in negative influences, and to believe that your circumstances define your limits. Because when you see struggle every day, it starts to feel normal. And when something feels normal, you stop questioning it. You stop fighting against it, and you accept it as your reality. But here is the uncomfortable truth that most people avoid. Your environment can influence you, but it does not control you unless you allow it. And that is where most people fail, because they give their power away without realizing it. They say, "This is where I come from, so this is who I am," and they never try to become more. LeBron could have easily followed that path. He could have made excuses. He could have said that life was unfair, and he would not be wrong, because it was unfair. But being right about your problems will not change your life. And this is something you need to understand deeply, because many people spend years explaining why they cannot move forward, instead of doing the work to actually move forward. At a certain point, LeBron was given a chance to live with a youth football coach named Frank Walker. And this moment was small on the surface, but powerful in reality, because for the first time, he experienced structure, consistency, and guidance. And sometimes all it takes is one small change, one new environment, or one person who believes in you, to start shifting your direction. So let me ask you again, and this question might be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Are you waiting for the perfect situation to change your life? Or are you ready to use whatever you have right now? Because LeBron did not wait for everything to be perfect. He adapted, he learned, and he stayed open to change, even when life was unstable around him. This phase of his life was not about success yet. It was about survival, about learning how to handle chaos without losing himself, and about building a foundation that most people never see. And as his life slowly started to gain a little more structure, something important began to appear. Something that would change everything. Even if at first it looked like just a simple game. Sometimes the thing that changes your life does not arrive with noise. It does not come with a big announcement, and it does not look like a miracle. Because most of the time it looks small, simple, and even ordinary. And that is exactly how basketball entered the life of LeBron James. Not as a promise of fame, not as a clear path to success, but as an opportunity to focus his energy, to create discipline, and to escape, even if just for a few hours, from the instability around him. At that point, his life was still not easy, and nothing was guaranteed. But when he stepped onto a court, something inside him started to change. Because for the first time, he found a place where effort created results, where practice made him better, and where he could see progress with his own eyes. And this is powerful, because when you grow up in chaos, you rarely feel in control. But when you find something that responds to your effort, it gives you a sense of direction that is hard to explain. At first, it was just a game, something fun, something that helped him stay busy and out of trouble. But slowly, very slowly, it became more than that, because he started to realize that this was not just an activity, it was a tool, a way to build something different for himself. And this is where many people miss their opportunity, because they look at small beginnings and think they are not important. They wait for something big, something obvious, something that clearly says, "This is your chance." But life rarely works like that. Opportunities often hide inside simple things, inside daily routines, inside moments that do not look special at all. And only those who pay attention, who stay consistent, and who keep showing up, start to see the real value. LeBron began to invest more time, more energy, and more focus into basketball. And even without understanding the full picture yet, he was building habits, he was learning discipline, and he was developing a mindset that would later separate him from everyone else. And here is something you need to hear clearly. Motivation is not enough, because motivation comes and goes, but discipline stays. Discipline shows up when you are tired, when you are distracted, and when you feel like stopping. And that is exactly what started to grow inside him. He was not perfect. He was still a kid dealing with real problems. But he had found something that gave him direction, and that direction began to organize his life in a way that nothing else had before. Now think about your own life. What is that one thing that you keep ignoring? That one activity, that one skill, or that one opportunity that seems small, but keeps coming back to you? Because maybe, just maybe, That is your starting point, not your final destination, but your beginning. And beginnings are not supposed to be impressive. They are supposed to be consistent. LeBron did not know he would become one of the greatest players in the world. He only knew that every time he stepped on the court, he had a chance to be better than yesterday. And that was enough. And as this simple game started to become something deeper, something more serious, the demands also started to grow. And with those demands came a truth that most people try to avoid. Because talent alone was no longer going to be enough. There comes a moment in every journey when excitement is no longer enough. When the simple joy of starting turns into the hard reality of continuing. And this is where most people stop. Because continuing requires something deeper, something stronger than motivation. And that something is discipline. And this is exactly the phase where the life of LeBron James began to separate from the average path. Because as basketball became more serious, the expectations grew, the competition increased, and the game was no longer just fun. It became a responsibility. At this point, many people like to believe that success comes from talent alone, that some individuals are simply born different. But this belief is comfortable and dangerous at the same time. Because it removes responsibility from your hands. It gives you an excuse to stay where you are. And it allows you to say, that is not for me. But the truth is very different. Because talent may open the door, but discipline is what keeps you inside the room. LeBron had talent, yes. But talent without structure can easily be wasted. And this is something you see every day in the world. People with potential who never become anything more. Not because they lack ability, but because they lack consistency. They lack focus, and they lack the willingness to do the work when no one is watching. As he continued to train, practice, and compete, LeBron started to understand that being good was not enough, because there were many good players, many talented athletes, and if he wanted something more, if he wanted to change his life for real, he needed to do more than what was expected. He needed to push beyond comfort, beyond excuses, and beyond distractions. And this is where discipline started to take control of his routine. Think about this carefully. Discipline is not something you feel. It is something you decide over and over again, every single day. Because there are days when you feel strong, focused, and ready. But there are also days when you feel tired, distracted, and unmotivated. And on those days, your feelings will tell you to stop, to rest, to delay. But discipline speaks differently. Discipline says, do it anyway. Do it tired. Do it imperfect. But do it, because consistency builds results, and results build confidence. LeBron began to train with more intensity, to take care of his body, to respect the process, and to understand that every small action mattered. Every practice, every repetition, every decision was building something bigger than he could fully see at that moment. Now, here is the real question for you. Are you waiting to feel ready? Or are you ready to act even when you don't feel like it? Because that is the difference between people who dream and people who achieve. And this is not easy to accept, but it is necessary. Because success is not about doing something once. It is about doing the right things again and again. Even when it becomes boring, even when it becomes difficult, and even when no one is paying attention. As LeBron continued to build this discipline, his level started to rise. His name started to spread, and people began to notice that something different was happening, something that could no longer be ignored. And with that attention came a new challenge, one that would test not just his skills, but his mind. Because suddenly, he was no longer just a talented kid. He was becoming a symbol, and that kind of pressure changes everything. Pressure has a way of revealing who you really are, because when expectations grow and eyes start watching you, there is no place to hide. And this is exactly what happened in the life of LeBron James as he entered his high school years. Because what started as a simple passion had now become something much bigger, something national, something that brought attention, media, and opinions from people who did not know him personally, but felt ready to judge him anyway. He was still a teenager, still learning about life, still growing as a person. But suddenly, He was being treated like a future legend. And with that came a nickname that followed him everywhere, the Chosen One. And although it may sound powerful, it also carried a heavy weight. Because being called chosen means people expect greatness. Not someday, but now. Not slowly, but immediately. Imagine being that young and having the world watching your every move, every game, every mistake, every decision. And now, ask yourself honestly, how would you react? Would you feel confident, or would you feel pressure? Because most people struggle with small expectations from family or friends. But this was something much bigger. Something constant. Something that could easily break a person who was not mentally strong. LeBron had cameras following him during games, journalists writing about him, and fans already comparing him to the greatest players in history, even before he had the chance to prove himself. And this kind of attention can be dangerous, because it can create fear, it can create anxiety, and it can make you focus more on not failing than on actually growing. But here's where something important happened. Instead of running away from the pressure, instead of letting it control him, LeBron started to accept it, to understand that pressure is not the enemy. It is part of the path. And this is a lesson you need to take seriously, because many people spend their lives trying to avoid pressure, trying to stay comfortable, trying to protect themselves from judgment. But in doing that, they also avoid growth, they avoid opportunities, and they stay in the same place year after year. Pressure is a sign that something matters. It is a sign that you are stepping into a bigger space. And if you learn how to handle it, it can make you stronger instead of weaker. LeBron continued to play at an incredible level, leading his high school team, St. Vincent's, 2 championships, and showing not only skill, but also leadership. Because it is one thing to be talented, but it is another thing to elevate the people around you, to make your team better, and to carry responsibility without losing focus. And this is where his mindset started to become even more important than his physical ability. He learned how to stay calm, how to block noise, and how to focus on what he could control: his effort, his attitude, and his preparation. Now let me ask you something directly. Are you running away from pressure in your life? Or are you learning how to face it? Because the truth is simple. If you want a bigger life, you must be ready for bigger pressure. And there is no way around it. Only through it. And as LeBron continued to prove himself under this intense spotlight, the next step was no longer a question of if, but when. Because the world was already watching. And the biggest stage of all was getting closer. Ready to test everything he had built so far. Dreams feel powerful when they are far away, when they live in your imagination, because in that space, everything looks perfect, everything feels possible, and there are no real consequences. But the moment a dream becomes real, everything changes, because reality brings pressure, responsibility, and challenges that no one can fully prepare you for. And this is exactly what LeBron James faced when he made the jump from high school to the NBA, going directly to the biggest basketball league in the world, without the transition that most players experience. One day he was a teenager playing in school gyms, and suddenly he was standing on a professional court, surrounded by experienced athletes, global attention, and expectations that did not disappear, but instead became even stronger, even heavier, and even more demanding. Many people think that reaching the dream is the hardest part, but the truth is different. Because reaching the dream is only the beginning. Staying there, growing there, and proving that you belong there is a completely different challenge. And this is where reality tests you in ways that imagination never could. LeBron was selected as the #1 pick in the NBA draft, which sounds like success. And in many ways it was. But it also meant that there were no excuses left. No more waiting, no more preparation. It was time to perform. Time to deliver, and time to face opponents who were stronger, faster, and more experienced than anyone he had played before. Every game became a test. Every mistake became visible. And every performance was analyzed by millions of people who were ready to praise or criticize him at any moment. At this stage, many young players feel overwhelmed, and some even fail. Not because they lack talent, but because they are not ready for the mental challenge, the speed of the game, and the pressure of expectations. And this is why mindset becomes everything, because your skills may bring you to the door, but your mindset decides if you stay inside. LeBron had to learn quickly. He had to adapt, to make mistakes, to improve, and to stay focused even when things did not go perfectly. And this is something you need to understand deeply, because growth is not clean. It is not perfect, and it is not always comfortable. Growth is messy, full of errors, full of adjustments, and full of moments where you question yourself. Now think about your own life again. How do you react when things become real? When the opportunity is in front of you? When there is no more waiting and no more excuses? Do you step forward or do you step back? Because this moment defines everything. This moment separates intention from action. And action is the only thing that creates results. LeBron did not have the option to go back. And maybe you don't either. Even if you think you do. Because every time you delay, you are losing time that you will never recover. As he continued his journey in the NBA, learning, adapting, and proving that he belonged at that level, success started to grow. But something was still missing. Something that would only become clear later. Because sometimes you can be doing well on the outside while still feeling incomplete on the inside. And that feeling would soon lead him into one of the most difficult and controversial moments of his entire career. Success on the outside does not always mean peace on the inside. And this is something many people only understand when they reach a place they once dreamed about. Because they realize that achievement alone does not solve everything. And this truth became very real in the life of LeBron James after his first years in the NBA. Because even though he was performing at a high level, even though he was becoming one of the biggest names in basketball, there was still something missing. Something that statistics and personal success could not fill. And that was the experience of truly winning at the highest level, of becoming a champion. He carried a team, he delivered incredible performances, but the ultimate goal remained just out of reach. And over time, the pressure started to grow again. Not the pressure of potential, but the pressure of results. Because people were no longer asking if he would be great. They were asking why he had not won yet. This is where things became uncomfortable. Because instead of staying in the same situation and accepting repeated disappointment, LeBron made a decision that changed everything. A decision to leave his hometown team, Cleveland, and join another team in Miami. And although this move was strategic, although it was about increasing his chances to win, the way it happened created a wave of criticism, anger, and disappointment from fans, from the media, and from people who once supported him. Suddenly, the same people who praised him began to question his character, to call him weak, to say that he took the easy path. And this moment became one of the most controversial decisions in sports history, not just because of the move itself, but because of how people felt about it. Now stop for a moment and think about this. What do you do when the world turns against you? When people misunderstand your decisions? When your intentions are questioned? And when your reputation is attacked? Because this is where many people break. This is where doubt becomes louder, where fear grows, and where the desire to quit becomes real. LeBron faced all of this. The criticism, the pressure, the negative attention. And he had two choices. He could let it define him, or he could use it as fuel. And this is a choice that you also face in your own life. Maybe not on a global stage, but in your own environment, with your own challenges. At first, things did not go perfectly in Miami, and that made the criticism even louder. Especially after losing in the NBA Finals, because failure in private is already difficult. But failure in public is something else entirely. It exposes you, it tests your confidence, and it forces you to confront your own weaknesses in front of everyone. But instead of running away, instead of making excuses, LeBron started to look inward, to reflect, to grow, and to improve not only as a player, but as a leader, as a teammate, and as a person. And this is where real growth happens. Not when everything is going well, but when everything is challenging you to become better. So let me ask you directly, when you fail, when you are criticized, when things do not go your way, do you look for excuses or do you look for lessons? because that decision will shape your future more than any talent or opportunity ever could. As LeBron embraced this difficult phase, learned from his mistakes, and strengthened his mindset, something began to shift. Something powerful. Something that would finally take him to the level he had been chasing for so long. And this time, he was ready not just to reach it, but to truly earn it. There is a moment in every journey when everything starts to connect, when the lessons, the failures, the pressure, and the discipline all come together to form something stronger, something more complete. And this is exactly what happened in the life of LeBron James during his time in Miami, because after facing criticism, after experiencing failure on a global stage, and after looking deeply at his own weaknesses, he did not stay the same. He evolved. And this evolution was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and strategic. He began to understand that being great was not only about scoring points or making impressive plays, but about consistency, leadership, and making the right decisions in the most important moments. And this shift changed everything. In the following seasons, LeBron played with a different mindset, one that was calmer, more focused, and more controlled, because he was no longer trying to prove himself to the world. He was focused on doing the work, on trusting the process, and on delivering when it mattered most. And this is a powerful lesson, because many people waste energy trying to impress others, trying to silence critics, and trying to prove their worth. But real growth happens when you stop looking outside and start building inside. His performances became more efficient. His decisions became smarter, and his presence on the court became stronger. Not because he suddenly became more talented, but because he became more complete. Then, the breakthrough finally came. He won his first NBA championship, and soon after, another one followed. And although these victories were important, the real transformation was not in the trophies. It was in the mindset that made those victories possible. Because success without growth is temporary, but success built on growth is sustainable. LeBron had learned how to handle pressure, how to respond to failure, and how to lead not only by example, but also by attitude. And this is what separated him from many others who had similar talent, but never reached the same level. Now think about your own journey again. Are you focused only on results, or are you building the mindset that can sustain those results? Because winning once is not enough. Achieving something once is not enough. The real challenge is to maintain, to grow, and to continue moving forward, even after success. Because success can make you comfortable, and comfort can make you slow. And that is a dangerous combination. LeBron did not stop after winning. He continued to train, to improve, and to push himself. Because he understood that the journey does not end when you reach a goal. It only changes direction. As he continued to win, to lead, and to establish himself as one of the best players in the world, something else started to grow inside him. A vision that went beyond basketball, beyond championships, and beyond personal success. Because at a certain point, the question is no longer what you can achieve for yourself, but what you can build that will last even after you are gone. And this is where his story begins to expand into something much bigger than the game itself. At some point in life, success stops being only about you. Because once you achieve things that many people only dream about, a new question begins to grow inside you. A deeper question that asks, what am I doing with all of this? And what will remain when my time here is over? And this is exactly the stage that LeBron James entered as his career continued to rise. Because he was no longer just a basketball player chasing victories. He was becoming a symbol, a voice, and a force that could influence lives far beyond the court. Many people reach success and stop there. They enjoy the rewards, they protect their comfort, and they avoid responsibility. But there are a few who choose a different path, a harder path, a path where success becomes a tool to create something bigger than themselves. And that is the direction LeBron decided to follow. He began to invest his time, his energy, and his resources into projects that could create real impact, especially in education, because he understood something very important. Opportunities change lives, And when you give someone access to education, guidance, and support, you are not just helping one person. You are changing an entire future. And this is why he created initiatives to support children and families from backgrounds similar to his own, because he never forgot where he came from. He never disconnected from his roots. And he never allowed success to make him blind to the struggles that still exist around him. This kind of awareness is rare because it requires humility. And humility is something that many people lose when they start winning. At the same time, he expanded his presence into business, media, and leadership, building partnerships, creating opportunities, and showing that being an athlete does not limit you. It can be the beginning of something much larger if you are willing to think beyond your current position. And this is a powerful lesson for you, because many people put themselves inside small boxes. They say, "This is my role, this is what I do," and they never explore what else is possible. But your identity is not fixed. It evolves based on your actions, your vision, and your willingness to grow. Now let me challenge you directly. What are you building that goes beyond your own comfort? What are you creating that will still matter in the future? Because working only for yourself will always feel limited, but building something that impacts others gives your life a different kind of meaning, a deeper kind of purpose. And purpose is what keeps you moving when motivation is gone, when things get difficult, and when results take time to appear. LeBron's story shows that success is not the final destination. It is a platform, a foundation that allows you to do more, to give more, and to become more. As his legacy continued to grow, not only through his achievements but through his actions off the court, one final question remained, one that now turns directly to you. Because at the end of the day, it is not about what he did. It is about what you are going to do with your own life, your own time, and your own opportunities. Because the clock is still moving. And whether you act or not, your story is still being written right now. So now we arrive at the moment where the story is no longer about LeBron James, because everything you needed to see is already in front of you. Every lesson, every struggle, every decision, and now the only question that remains is simple. But it is also the most difficult one. What are you going to do with your life starting today? Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready, but today. Because if you are still waiting for the perfect moment, you are already losing time. And time is the one thing you will never get back. You have heard about the instability, the pressure, the failures, the criticism, the growth, and the success. And now you understand that none of it was easy, none of it was perfect, and none of it happened by accident. It was built step by step, decision by decision, day after day, even when it was hard, even when it was uncomfortable, and even when it felt impossible. Most people spend their lives watching stories like this and thinking, that is inspiring, that is powerful, but that is not me. And that thought becomes a wall, a limitation that keeps them exactly where they are. Because they disconnect themselves from the possibility of change. They believe that greatness belongs to someone else, to another place, to another reality. But that is not true. And deep inside you know it. Because the same way a young boy from a difficult life found direction, built discipline, faced pressure, failed, learned, and rose again, you also have the ability to take control of your path. Even if your situation is not perfect, even if your resources are limited, and even if your progress feels slow right now, let me be direct with you. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to build your future for you. And no one is responsible for your growth except you. And this is not negative. This is power. Because the moment you accept responsibility, you take control. And when you take control, you can change direction. You can improve. And you can move forward. But only if you act. Only if you stop making excuses. And only if you start using your time with intention. Ask yourself, what habits are you building every day? What decisions are you repeating? And where are those choices taking you? Because your future is not created in one big moment. It is created in small actions that you repeat again and again. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to have everything figured out, and you do not need to start big, but you do need to start. And you need to stay consistent, because consistency is what transforms effort into results, and results into confidence, and confidence into a new identity. And once you start to see yourself differently, everything begins to change. This is your moment to decide, to stop waiting, to stop doubting, and to start building something real, something meaningful, something that you can be proud of. The world is not waiting for your excuses. It is waiting for your action. And whether you realize it or not, your time is already running. So make a choice, take a step, do the work, and prove to yourself that your story is not finished. It is just beginning. And what happens next is entirely up to you. So move, act, and don't stop until you become the person you know you can be. Because the world is waiting for you, and it will not wait forever.